similarity in a lot of your questions, so I'm going to be putting them together. Just in terms of bringing up the energy and the oil issue, how would you, Dana and John, convince people who want us to be energy independent but do not want us to use our own oil and coal reserves? And now also the question of nuclear, where we have a president of a party that's been anti-nuclear for as many years as we've had nuclear, and suddenly now he's saying that he wants nuclear. So it's kind of a combined question of the oil and the nuclear. Dana?
There's an old joke Will Durst does. It's like Americans also want to, Americans want clean energy and they want to be energy independent. They also want to sit on the sofa and eat potato chips and lose weight. I mean, at a certain point, you just have to. The American people, right now we've reached a point where we don't trust our government. I think that's really one of the biggest problems we have right now is we don't trust our government. I think if we come out and we say, here are the solutions, I think we've reached a point that it's only a certain number of people that are very detached from the real suffering that's going on in this country with the unemployment as it is, that we can't say, look, we have resources here, we have to be able to use them, we can do it, we have done it in a responsible way environmentally. Get over it. I do think it's very positive. Again, I don't trust Obama at all, but I think the fact that he's talking about nuclear energy is a very good thing, because I don't think, certainly if we're not going to drill here, we're going to have to do it with nuclear, because there's no way with wind and solar, it's not going to happen. So I think it's very positive. I just met last week at the CRP convention a group of people from Nevada with that Yucca Mountain thing, and we're going to be having some talks. It turns out my dad moved our family out west when he became the president of Lear Motors. That was back in the late 60s, the first oil embargo. And he was president of this company that was going to build a steam car. Now, it didn't come to be. It was financially unfeasible, but they gave it a real good shot. And so it turns out one of the men involved in this is an old friend of my dad's from the company. So we're going to get together, and I'll be able to make a far more educated and intelligent answer to you after I've had a meeting with them. Thank you.
Okay, and John, how would you convince people to use our oil reserves to make us energy independent, and also addressing the issue of nuclear power?
Okay. Well, I have to take issue with the question, actually, of energy independence. I'm not so sure that energy independence is something that we ought to really be striving for. I'm very concerned about this concept of energy independence. We're a worldwide market for commodities, a worldwide market for goods and services. And for some reason, we want to have autarky, which is self-sustaining in this energy area. Why can't we trade for energy? Why not? I'm afraid that it's another excuse for big government programs. They tell us that they want us to have energy independence, and then they funnel enormous amounts of resources into solar. Solar is so cost ineffective. Into all of these other schemes, all of these green energy plans. Let's rethink that a little bit. Let's just think about it. We get about 60% of our energy from North America. We have plenty of resources here. And if we, now that part of the question that I actually agree with. I mean, we should open up our resources to the private market, auction these lands off, let them go after they give them the rights, sell off the rights, and let them drill and do whatever they want there, as long as they're not hurting anybody else. Right? So, yeah, please give me a yeah, so let's drill, but let's not get caught up in the energy independence thing, because I'm afraid that gives us an opportunity for another government scheme. Okay, yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Just a point.
Go back and forth on it.
Not supposed to be.
Take my time. I have about 30 seconds. Take it.
Yeah, go ahead. All right.
I think it's really important to understand that oil that is not nationalized, that is in the 5 countries, I think it's Russia, Venezuela, Iraq, Iran, and Saudi Arabia, there's only 15% that is not controlled by those countries. And one of John's positions is that we have to be more friendly to them. And again, what I've said is that's not an answer. So I don't think we should. John has a theory that the only energy policy we need is a good foreign policy, and I don't think that being friendly to those nations is going to work, much less make us energy independent.
to add to that, there were leases that were granted for companies to do drilling in this country, and I heard on the news this afternoon, I only heard it on the news, I didn't research it, that all of those leases have been rescinded today. So, I mean, there is a huge move out there to just stop everything, and this, you have to be aware of it, so. Yes?
Just one quick comment. I think we should be as friendly as people as possible. I hope people weren't applauding for not having diplomatic relations with other countries. Right? I mean, we do want to be friendly with other countries. I'm not saying we're kowtowing to anybody. I'm just drill away, use our resources as we can, but let's not get caught up in energy independence, because those are the kinds of things that they hook us on.
The next question would go to John, and again, I have a stack of cards here that all have to do with foreign policy, national security, et cetera, et cetera. Dana raised some issues in your opening statement that you challenged some of John's positions on this. What is your position on national security and our dealing with, for example, the Islamist countries that are threatening us in the war on terror, which current administration doesn't acknowledge, at least seemingly?
Okay. Well, in terms of the war on terror, I'm very concerned about any totalitarian philosophy, whether it be secular or religious. So we have to protect ourselves, of course, and national security is one of the appropriate roles of the federal government. We have to do it smart, though. We have to be very, very careful, and we also have to do it not at the expense of our individual liberties. That's something that I'm very, very concerned about. How do we deal with foreign nations? Is that part of the question? No?
Yeah, I mean, what would be your foreign policy? What would your position be on our foreign policy?
It's a pretty broad question.
In terms of national defense?
Oh, well, I mean, we should have an impregnable, incredibly strong national defense. We have to make sure that every American is safe. There's really not much more to it than that. I mean, just as much for a strong national defense as anything else, or as anyone else here. There's some other differences that we have, though. And one of those differences are we using our resources appropriately right now? For example, we are spending now, the Obama administration has decided to up the ante in Afghanistan. An ante, incidentally, that many Republicans across the board, I'm going to read something to you in a little bit if I get the opportunity, disagree with. Republicans like Dana Rohrabacher, Republicans like Tom McClintock, columnists like George Will, radio talk show hosts like Michael Savage, all question whether or not we should continue our involvement in Afghanistan. We just committed $30 billion to Afghanistan. By the congressional testimony from some of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, they estimate that there are 100 al-Qaeda left in Afghanistan. 100. That's $300 million per head. The underwear bomber's father walked into our embassy and told on him. And we are funneling all of these resources towards this big, vast, open waste of space. Terrorist attacks can be planned and have been planned from every corner of the earth. The 9/11 attacks were planned in Hamburg and in Florida to some degree. Richard Reed, the shoe bomber, planned his attacks from London. Afghanistan is not the only place on earth where people can plan terrorist attacks. We have to be very careful about where we're using our resources. Fiscal conservatism means that there are no sacred cows. We have to look at the entire budget for the federal government and make sure that our military spending is done appropriately. Thanks.
Thank you.
And yes, we do have very different views on this. We have been attacked from Afghanistan.